in light of the recent incident that happened at Ocho Rios Primary School, where children were sold cannabis-laced sweets, we've invited Vice President, we've invited of Ganja Growers and Producers Association of Jamaica, Vicky Hansen. She's also Regional Coordinator for the Caribbean Fair Trade Cannabis Working Group, to have a chat with us this morning. Good morning, Vicky. Welcome.
Morning, Vicky.
Morning, Delia. Morning, Neville. Thank you for having us
and
for engaging in this conversation.
Yeah, man. How are you?
Well, we have had better days, given the situation, but we're doing well.
Yeah. We had someone here yesterday, and I was suggesting that even though I know what edibles are, I've never seen it in the way the ones that the kids had.
Packaging.
Yeah, packaging. I never saw that before. Is this something that's been around for a while, or is this something new coming into the space?
I must admit, Neville, it has been in the space. I'd like to declare, first and foremost, that the Ganja Growers and Producers Association and our partners, stakeholders, do not support edibles being sold to children. We categorically condemn the act. We also must outline that there are no strict regulations in place as it is now regarding edibles. So edibles is still a legal matter. And we have been at pains to say to the Ministry of Health to put the regulatory framework in place, because what we find in this situation is that we are being blamed as regulated or you are stakeholders for this mishap, and it shouldn't be. So we have asked for standards regarding packaging. You mentioned about the packaging and the labeling. We must say that this product, as you would have seen from the label, is from overseas. And there needs to be regulation to prevent the importation of these products.
Okay.
Tell us about the rise in cannabis edibles, Vicky, because I feel like this is just maybe the tip of the iceberg, that outside of the children, that more and more we're seeing people producing edibles that include cannabis.
You know, Delia, it's not necessarily a rise. It's what is being showcased now. It's out there. It has always been there. I think the challenge now that we have somewhat of a decriminalized framework, persons do not understand the rules and regulations surrounding the framework, and so it's now more open in its access. It's always been there. We have offered as an association and as stakeholders to be a part of the education program. You mentioned earlier about engagement. We want to be a part of that public engagement to say to persons, these are the parameters and these are the expectations, rather than putting out there this fear of, and to kind of get rid of some of the myths around the whole industry and the plant. But it has always been there. It's the accessibility of it as well. We need to have a look at, and the framework surrounding that.
Yep. Forgive my ignorance, Miss Vicks. What's the difference between eating a cookie that have ganja in it and smoking a spliff? What's the difference?
Well, the main difference is that, for example, the THC and certain components are enhanced because of the oils and the heating and the cooking of it, or the baking of it. So you have things are more potent, and it goes directly to your bloodstream a little quicker in that case, which is why, Neville, we wanted to be a part of that education framework. And I stress that because persons don't really, like you said, your own ignorance is also some of the ignorance of other persons. They don't really fully understand the plant and the products that come from the plant.
Now, in this instance, the packaging was labeled. It was very clear what was included, and that THC was a component. But Vicky, I've seen edibles that are not properly packaged, I've known instances of people consuming edibles without knowing that cannabis is inside. What can we do to ensure that, as a regulation, people have to know that this is what we're having?
So the problem, you realize, Delia, is twofold. As you mentioned, in this package, it was labeled, but being labeled, persons didn't understand what a THC is and how it was labeled. This is very attractive to children. And so we need to have some standards regarding packaging, the accessibility of it to children. Should not be able to just tear this package, open it, and access the product. So that's one element we have to look at. In the other element, in terms of how you deal with the packaging and labeling, that's something the licensed producers, the GGPAG, Bureau of Standards, have been looking at in terms of packaging rules and how we also put on the label what it is for, who should access it, and where it is dispensed. And I used the word dispensed because cannabis, as in the framework that it is now, should be dispensed at certain locations from the licensed authority or from the licensed personnel. So we have to look at those. And as well, you have people doing parties. We have to set some standards as to what you must declare to your participants when they are coming to your events, if you're going to have these things. So which is important, as I said, that we feel as an association, as licensed personnel, that we need to be a part of the conversation. We need to be there to deal with the public education, to explain to persons what is THC and how it impacts on them widely. I think part of it is that the vendors would have seen this person selling this thing, and they themselves as adults didn't even know what it was. And so we need to get ahead of the game. It's not about creating fear, but creating understanding and knowledge for the greater public.
Yeah, Ms. Vicks, you mentioned standards, you mentioned regulation, you use the word illegal about edibles. Does that mean that people who are, the word standard is what I want to focus on now. So the people who are doing the edibles, there's really no standard as to what they put in it. So some might put plenty more of one thing and less of another thing. So there's really, that kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we have said to the Ministry of Health, there is a medicinal cannabis unit in the Ministry of Health, and we have been at pains to say to them, just like how you have done for the licensees and the CLA have done, what are the rules? Don't lock it out, because you lock this thing out to say it should not be on the market. It is there. So let us sit and develop measures so you know when you have a cookie, it is properly labeled that you have this amount of THC, this amount of CBD, and if it is used in this condition, it will give this effect, that kind of effect. But what we have now is that is not there, and those conversations are not happening. And so, as you know, people will go into the gray areas and just do and operate. So we are saying, do not shut it out, but sit with us. We have persons with specific skill sets here that can guide that conversation. We have experiences, and we have models elsewhere in the world that we can look at that have indeed implemented frameworks for edibles.
Yep.
And so let us not just leave it out there and hope it will resolve itself,
Yep.
but develop some structures for it, and that we can properly hold persons accountable.
And that's where I want to end, holding persons accountable. You're not a lawmaker as far as I know. But what happens, because again, coming from the word illegal, so if I'm held with edibles, what? They lock me up? What happened?
Well, you know, part of it is that we have been saying, so the regulations right now, persons are not really being arrested, but there are charges that can be laid against someone, especially as it relates to selling to minors.
Okay.
So what we're saying to the authority is that let's set some parameters, let's set some framework, let's set some rules. Because Neville, as you said, they're not being locked up right now. Nobody is doing anything because there is a hands-off approach. Because you're not too sure if you lock up somebody for edible, somebody is saying, but there are greater crimes out there that you can lock up people for, you're not locking them up for. So I think the authorities are in a kind of a sticky situation with that.
Okay.
So for us, we're saying, bring us to the table. Let us help you regulate the space as well. Let us help you create the standards. And that way, these are the specific requirements. And we can help with policing, and I don't like to use the word policing, but for want of a better word right now, with ensuring that the rules are maintained. Because that's what came out ahead of this situation when we heard of it. And we too, because of this situation, are looking to launch a public sensitization and campaign, because we don't want this to happen again to our children, and we are aware of the lack of knowledge that is out there in the space. So we'll be seeing us out there, you'll be hearing from us more to prevent these things and to encourage responsible adult use.
All right.
Very well explained. Thanks for being with us this morning. Stay safe. Blessings.
You're welcome, and thanks for having us for the conversation.
Our pleasure.
Regional Coordinator with the Caribbean Fair Trade Cannabis Working Group, Vicky Hansen. After the break, folks, we'll have a discussion on getting motorcyclists and pillions to wear helmets. We've had this discussion 40 million years now. Soon come. Stay with us, please.